combining his passion for language learning with his interest in world news. There you are, Stephen. How are you?
Hi, I'm okay. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Perfectly.
Great.
Yes. Where are you
Excellent.
exactly today? Where are you now?
I'm in a town called Sevenoaks, which is about an hour south of London.
Oh, okay. Great. An hour south. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because as I was checking your bio, I noticed that you've lived all over. You've traveled you've traveled quite a while. Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
Okay.
quite a bit. Yeah, I've
Hmm.
so maybe I'll start there. Shall I say a bit about where I've been traveling and living?
Yes, you will. You should. You should. Yes, yes.
Okay.
But first things first. Tell us about. I mean, the anything about the pandemic. You can tell us how are things moving there these days. Any announcements on the part of the government?
Yeah,
I don't know.
actually from right now, so it's 2 a.m. here, and from just today, everybody has to wear a mask if you're going into a shop. That's new from 2 hours ago.
Okay. Okay. What
Yeah,
time is it there now?
2 a.m.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have you up at this time.
I'm happy to be up to talk to you, really.
Okay, okay, great. Yes, we're helping to make SEND7 a more worldwide I mean project and to cover more areas and more countries. Well,
Thank you so
I've been
much. Yeah.
I've been mentioning this SEND7 podcast. What does SEND go for? SEND7 podcast.
Yeah, so it's SEND because it's SEND, Simple English News Daily. And the seven is because it's 7 minutes. So it's Simple English News Daily in 7 minutes. SEND7.
Okay, great. It was a very interesting idea. And well, I remember I've been in Chile for 20 something years now. And when I first started teaching here, there was some news or weekly news in, I mean, printed version. And we used it a lot here for non-natives to use with our students,
Yeah,
and our students liked it a lot. So I think it's a great idea to have it now on, this podcast version. Um,
yeah.
so tell us now. Let's go backwards a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Stephen.
Okay,
Stephen, the
well,
person, the language teacher. You've been to several
sure.
countries. Please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Joaquín. So my name's Stephen DeVincenzi. I'm from England. Yeah, just south of London, and I studied educational sciences at university. So the theories of learning and teaching, a bit of psychology, a bit of pedagogy, things like that. And then I lived in Spain for a year teaching English. I lived in India for a year teaching English, and in Thailand, I was teaching English. Most recently, I was in Argentina, where
Hmm.
I was for 2 years. I was in 1 year in Buenos Aires and 1 year in the north in Resistencia. And just last year, I came back to England, and I've been working as a primary school teacher. And just since lockdown started 3 or 4 months ago, I decided to start this podcast, which I've been thinking about doing for a long time.
Okay. And well, I can imagine. I can imagine that. I mean, from your experience, you've been, for how long you have been or you were out of your country? For how many
Oh,
years?
maybe 5 or 6 years, something like that. Six. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And that probably gave you a lot of experience in relation to how difficult it is for a non-native of the language to try and understand, right? What?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
I think everybody learns in different ways. And I could really see some things which, for example, are complicated for an Indian person, are easy for a Spanish-speaking person. And for some things which are easy for a Spanish-speaking person, are complicated for a Thai person. There's lots of there's small differences between people's native languages, which make things easier or harder when they're trying to learn English or any language. So
mm.
yeah,
I, I notice you speak other languages too. Actually, as we did our rehearsal, we spoke Spanish, and I've told you that you have very good Spanish. Which was harder for you to learn, Spanish or French?
um, for me, I think probably French was more difficult than Spanish. Um, Probably because I had a little bit more influence from Spanish when I was younger. My father is from Gibraltar, um, and so when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in Gibraltar and went through Spain and heard Spanish being spoken. So when I was older and I decided that I wanted to learn Spanish, it was a little bit more comfortable for me. And this mixed with the fact that Spanish is 99% phonetical, this is really important. And French is not phonetical, so for me, it's probably more difficult, especially more difficult to write. But yeah, but they help each other as well because there are many things that are the same in Spanish and French, especially, for example, uh, almost everything which is masculine or feminine in French is the same in Spanish and vice
Mm,
versa. Things like that
okay,
are very helpful. Yeah.
okay, interesting. Which one did you learn first? Probably you said it, and I lost you. I got lost. You learned French first?
Actually, more or less the same time. I think I started both of them when I was in secondary school, so at 12, 13 years old. And you in England, well, the language teaching is not great. A lot of people learn for 3 years, either French or German or Spanish, but they don't really learn anything. But I was very interested, so I practiced more and I continued to study French and Spanish until I was 18. And yeah, when I was 18, my French and Spanish was already okay, not bad. But then after I spent some time in France and I spent some time in Spain, and now I feel comfortable speaking both.
That's great. I want to remind our viewers that they can share this interview right now by clicking on the paper airplane icon at the bottom, and immediately you can share it with your own followers. So for those of you who are just joining in, and we are having Stephen DeVincenzi telling us about his project SEND7 podcast, which is a great project, a great, what can we call it? It's a device. It's just a podcast. Yes, a tool we can start using with our own students. Okay, for them to break this, this challenge of trying to listen to the news in English. So now tell us about the project. How did it all started?
Um, well, Joaquin, what can I say? Uh, I think more than a year ago, I already started to think that for me, listening to the news, uh, other things as well, maybe movies and songs, but for me, it was mostly news, especially radio. I listened to Spanish and French every day, and this for me was really helpful in continuing to practice, especially when I was by myself. when I was, especially when I was in England and didn't have the opportunity to talk to people all the time in Spanish and French, I would find some internet radios and listen to things like that. And I thought maybe this is something that would be useful for other people to, for them to be able to have a content which is new, which is relevant to them, which is interesting, and which is in a slightly more simple English for them to understand. And yeah, I've been thinking about making this podcast for maybe a year, and this coronavirus, obviously terrible, but for me it was the perfect opportunity to start this project. Yeah.
Right. Because I think it must take a lot of your time. It probably takes a lot of your time, and then wow, having to be, you know, closed, shut down in your place, it's kind of an opportunity for SEND7 to come live, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So you've been producing this program for this podcast for how long now?
I think it's 3 months. 3 months, yeah, more or less.
Okay.
Every day. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's worth
it. Every day. It's every day.
At the moment it is every day, but probably in September it will just be Monday to Friday, so I can actually have a weekend.
Wow, man, yeah. Take those 2 days for you, right? You need to rewire yourself. Okay. Now this is interesting. You've been producing this on a daily basis, and in what ways are you letting people know about this? I mean, are you connected to schools or any language institutes in the world? Or
I've found it difficult to reach out to language schools and things like that. I've mostly tried promotion through social media, well, mostly Facebook. I actually only started an Instagram page just 2 weeks ago, I think. So hopefully I can get a lot more subscribers now from this, hopefully. But mostly through word of mouth, through being on lots of different podcast apps, because Simple English News Daily, SEND7, is on all podcast apps. All of them you can think of, on Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts, iTunes, all of them. So this helps it to get out. But yeah, I want to make more contact with language schools and academies and things like this.
Right.
Yeah. In the future.
Well, so we are very willing to promote your project here in Latin America, particularly in Chile, and I will tell you in a few minutes. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. But basically, we need material like this, and I promise that Instagram is going to be of much help, because people who follow, people who follow Instagram are really into this type of applications. Now, have you been receiving feedback?
I have. You know, the best feedback for the podcast is to see more people listen in general, and especially see people listen every day. That's the best thing. When I see that people are listening every day, that for me means that the content is interesting and that they understand it and that they want to listen again. And that for me is the best feedback there is. But also I receive messages sometimes from people telling me that they enjoy the podcast, that they are happy that they know what is happening in Africa or in Asia, and generally that they can understand my English, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, you have a very clear standard English, which is which is, I mean, we thank you for that. I have two technical questions now, in terms of the contents, the construction of the contents. Where do you take your contents from?
Yeah.
What makes you decide? I mean, you have 7 minutes per day. How do you get to choose what you're going to talk about?
Great question. Yeah, great question. What I try to do is to think what is genuinely the most important stories in the world right now. So I mostly go to the major news sites in the world. So, for example, Al Jazeera, BBC, Sky, The Guardian, and then I see what I think is generally being covered by everybody, and I always make sure that there is something from every continent. If you listen to the podcast more than once, you'll realize that I normally go through the continents. I say today in America, and I start talking about things that are happening in all of the Americas, from Canada down to Patagonia, and then I go through Europe, and I will say the most important stories in Europe, and then I will say Africa and say the most important stories in Africa, and then I will go to Asia, say the most important stories in Asia, like that. That's the normal way that I go through these 7 minutes. And of course, it's not enough time, because there's always going to be something important happening which doesn't get said. But I try to, as much as possible, say what is really the biggest stories in the world today.
Okay, great. SEND7 podcast. Okay, and we're interviewing today. We're interviewing the creator of this project, Stephen. How do you make it simple English? What makes you decide? How can you choose the structures and the rhythm of the speaking? How can you decide on that?
Yeah, so I generally say that SEND7 is B1, B2 level. I think that this is probably the most simple level in which you can tell the news properly, because probably for a lower level, for A2, it's probably not possible to say the news correctly, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose I find the stories, and then I try to understand them as best as possible, and think what is a more simple way for me to say this sentence and the next sentence and the next sentence. So yeah, so the idea is that for the person who is listening to it, the story is complicated, but the English is simple, or simplified, you could say.
Okay. And I understand, I assume that probably because of your experience of teaching English in other countries, in a variety such as India or Argentina, that has given you the right pace to choose the vocabulary, to choose the words, and the rhythm at which you have to make the recording. Right?
I think so. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I hope so. I think it's very important to be thinking about the person who you are talking to. And when I'm trying to speak in a way that everybody can understand me, I have to choose my words carefully. And, I think this is a good idea for everybody to do, but it's especially important for this podcast. I think it's a real, how do you say, virtue for all people to make themselves understandable. It's more important to be understandable than to speak in fancy language, if you see what I mean. And
okay.
you don't have to use big words, to make a big point.
Okay. Yes. Yes. That's very interesting what you're mentioning now. I have the chance to deliver talks about a topic that is not that easy sometimes, which is neuroeducation.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of us as a team, we need to decide on the specific words we need to use in order for us to make ourselves understood, you know? Otherwise,
Yeah.
I mean, if the message is not understood by anybody, then, you know,
Then what's the
what
point?
are you talking to? What is it for? Right, right.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
Here in Latin America, we are into the trend of what we call the methodology PBL, project-based learning, which
Yeah.
you may have heard of. And
Yeah.
PBL includes, among its 6 main characteristics, it includes, it should be within what we call authentic teaching, authentic material.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Would you consider SEND7 podcast material to be authentic English?
Joaquin,
Why
this
yes?
is,
Why
yeah,
no? I don't know.
yeah, thank you. That for me is one of the most important points of the podcast. It is absolutely genuine material. It is relevant every day. Hopefully, if I'm choosing the stories correctly, then it's the most important stories in the world at the moment. So yeah, it's the most authentic it can be, and which is why I think it's important for me to continue to do it daily, because there are some similar podcasts which are weekly, which are very good, but I think SEND7 is the only daily podcast which can keep things very relevant for everybody listening, and especially if you are a teacher, to keep your students interested that day.
Okay, interesting. Listen, let me remind our viewers, they will be able to watch this interview entirely as we finish it. We put it on our IGTV. It's like the Instagram channel, and they will be able to watch it again and share it from there. Okay, so I'm telling them. And listen, I have this Chinese proverb I'd like to share with you. And then you can give us your opinion from your experience of traveling and teaching in different parts of the world. It says, to learn a language is to have one more window from which to look at the world. What do you think about it? How has your experience been in terms of learning different languages and teaching your own?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a beautiful proverb. Yeah, I definitely agree. There is, it's possible to communicate with people when you don't speak their language, and that's fine. That's nice, actually. It can be very nice. But if you are able to speak to a person in their language, it really does open another window, I think. It allows you to enter into their world more than you can if they are speaking your language, or if you're speaking in a broken way. I think it can be a really excellent experience to travel and speak to people in their language. And really, after being able to do this now in English and Spanish and French, it only makes me want to learn more languages so I can do the same in other places, you know? Yeah, but yeah, I agree.
Okay, okay, interesting. You were telling us that you had the chance. Were you teaching English in India or
Yeah.
another language? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, in India I was teaching English a little bit of French, but mostly English in India. Yeah.
Okay, so where was it harder for learners or students of English to to try and understand what they were listening? How difficult was it in India as compared to Argentina, for example? And we have several people connecting from Argentina today. So,
hello everyone from Argentina.
Where in Argentina were you lived? Where did you live there?
Yeah, I was in Buenos Aires for 1 year, I think, and then I was in Resistencia in the north for 1 year as well. I'd say to answer your previous question, I would say the biggest difference between teaching English in India to in Argentina is probably that in India they have more English in their general life. There are lots of signs in English. You see English around in many places. There are many schools, private schools, that function just in English. There are some in Argentina as well, but more in India. And yeah, the school that I was teaching in, most of the children spoke pretty good English already, and I was helping with some slightly more difficult things, literature and stuff like that. Whereas in Argentina, maybe there are some private schools again which have very high level of English, but I'd say most younger people probably don't speak so much, if that makes sense.
Okay, it makes sense. It makes sense. So apparently English is like a second language in India, right? So
well, it's actually, it's an official language, and I would say a lot of people speak it. It's unfortunately, you can see a very clear class divide. So people who are of the upper classes, everybody can speak English, and then people who are poorer in general are not able to. So that's quite a division there. But yeah, it's common to see English around the place, and sometimes you may have two Indian people speaking to each other in English if they are from very different places. Like somebody who's from the very south of India is in the north. It can be that the language they have in common is English.
okay, that's something that you would not see here. So interesting to hear that. Now about Latin American learners, what was something that was challenging for them in the listening that you might be considering now as you produce the podcasts? Anything?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. From a listening point of view, difficult to say. There are some sounds which either don't exist in Spanish, or they are very difficult to say which is which. Like, for example, one sound that I often heard from Spanish speakers not being able to say correctly, or not being able to differentiate, was the g and the w. So, for example, good, like this is good, and wood, like a table which is made from wood. Sometimes
right.
G and w, which for me they are totally different. It was very, very surprising for me to see that this could be something complicated. But I heard that a lot. A lot of Spanish speakers find it difficult to say or hear, but especially say good and would. This is one thing.
Okay, interesting. And then the moment you are producing the podcasts, you are thinking of those in particular. Well, some of the teachers that are following us today, that are listening to you and are planning on trying the podcast with their students, they might be thinking, okay, then how can I use these podcasts in order to help my students improve their listening comprehension and getting, moving up in the famous framework of language, B1, B2. So a couple of ideas on how to use the podcasts in their classes, please.
Okay, well, one thing which can be very useful is that on my website, which is send7.org, so SEND7.org, there you have the transcripts. So every day when I upload the podcast, you have the text there to find on the website. And one thing which I think can be a nice exercise, especially for maybe B1 level, would be just to take this transcript and blank out some of the words and get them to listen and try to fill in the words. That's quite a simple exercise, I think. So that would probably be good for a kind of B1 level.
And the transcripts are there too, right?
That's right. Yeah. So the text is it's free. It's there on the website for anybody to find. So yeah, go to send7.org/transcripts, or just go to send7.org and you can find it. There's also, if you are looking at the website on your computer, you can read at the same time as listening to the podcast. And if you're looking at it on your cell phone, on your mobile phone, then you can press play and then return to that page so you can read at the same time. But this is for somebody to use the transcript personally. But for a teacher, yeah, as I said before, you can try blanking out some of the words and getting your students to sorry, can you repeat your website? Shall I type it in? How about that? Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
That's a good idea.
Do it. Just type it in. But this is what we will do afterwards. We will also type it in the comments area as we post the video to the IGTV. Great. Send7.org. Great. Yeah. So I'm inviting teachers and teachers to be and students, learners of the language, to connect and find the material that Stephen is producing for SEND7 podcasts. Interesting. So you were telling us about some of the activities teachers can do with the material, which is produced on a daily basis. Once again, and I'm saying this again because we have viewers coming and going. This is how Instagram works, and so you have been designing this based on previous experience with learners whose first language is another language other than English. Okay.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate your effort.
Thank you. I have had some native English speakers say to me, "Hey, I love your podcast because it's a good way to listen to the world's news very fast." So there's some native speakers who listen to it as well, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah. Interesting. Okay, we have some teachers. Yeah, I have. We're having some teachers connecting from Lima, Peru, and well, I assume it's a language teacher. And now comes the question: who is SEND7 for? So the SEND7 is for. It's either for teachers who want to use it with their students, as there are some people here. Hello. And it's also for people who want to continue to listen to English
every day with something relevant, something new, something which is keeping them informed of the most important things happening in the world. And it's something which maybe for a person who doesn't have time to sit down and take out a book and be doing some exercises, but prefers to just listen to something as they're taking the train, going for a walk, something like that. So for these people, 7 minutes, it can be a nice way to continue to be engaged in English every day. And then, of course, for people who actually do want to study more, they also have access to the transcripts to read at the same time. But maybe also, if people are maybe not quite as confident, then it's a good idea to look at the transcript at the same time, and so they can read the news at the same time as listening to me say the news. That can be helpful as well. And of course, for teachers who would like to use it in class, that's fantastic. There's one other thing I said that one thing I forgot to say, that teachers who have maybe slightly more advanced students or more confident students, you can also send a short clips of students, or you or anybody who wants to can send short clips of themselves saying the news in their country, something important which has happened in their country. Send it to me, which is also on the website, and I can sometimes put this in the next day's podcast. And I've already done that a few times, and it sounds really nice. And it can be a nice thing for students to do.
That's actually very interesting and very motivating. So if teachers are listening to this, they can have their students become reporters for one day.
Exactly.
Yes, become a reporter for one day, so they can prepare the recording, and students are very likely to do it these days.
Yeah.
And then they can send it to you, and they would be listening to their product, and also feeling like, wow, they are producing something that will be connecting and be heard in other parts of the world. I mean,
exactly.
it's great.
Absolutely, yeah. That's
yeah,
right.
it's great.
Yeah, they if they do send it in, it will definitely be listened to by people in 40, 50, 60 different countries.
Great. Can you give us a few statistics of the podcast? People from how many countries are listening to the podcast these days?
Well, I'd say every day, 50 countries for sure. So
okay.
Yeah, so maybe the countries with the most listeners at the moment are probably Mexico, maybe Brazil, quite a few, Japan, quite a few, South Korea, India, there's quite a few in India, Spain, Italy, and last week there was lots of people from France listening, which is new.
Okay.
But and then lots of random people. I get 1 or 2 listeners from all over the place. Really.
Okay.
Some places in Africa, lots of places in Asia. Yeah. Lots of countries.
We hope that after this interview, figures from Chile and Argentina and Peru go high.
Yeah,
so
I hope so. Yeah.
You should let us know.
From Chile.
Yeah, yes.
I'd like to have more people from Chile listening, actually.
Hopefully. Listen, what's coming next for this project? What's next? What are the next steps?
One thing I have very recently kind of learned how to do is there's so the player, the podcast player, which is like a button that you press to play the podcast, I can now share that thing, the player itself. So, for example, if a school has a website or something, a place that they would actually like to put the player, I can give that to them. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well?
Can you explain that again?
Yeah, I'll explain that again. Okay, so
sure.
it's imagine a button on your website. So, for example, on neuroaprendizaje websites or on the
Right.
college websites, to play SEND7 podcast. It's possible to actually put that button onto any website which is around. I haven't put that on the website yet, how to do that, but if somebody wanted that, then they can contact me and I can show them how to do it.
Oh, okay. That sounds interesting. Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense thinking of groups of students and schools, who want to make the effort to connect. And as someone said before, collaborative work, collaborative project working, which teachers and students are looking for. They are looking into this type of activity. Okay. So I think it's very, very interesting. So
great.
yeah, it sounds really good.
Can I change the subject for a moment? You said that
Sure.
you were giving a talk today. I'm sorry that I didn't see it. You've been talking all day, have you?
Yeah, no, not all day. I was participating in Cambridge Day 2020. And I had to deliver at 5:30 this afternoon for 4:30 Chile. It's now 10 to 10. So and I took the morning off. I took morning off. Yes, because
was it good? Did you enjoy the talk?
I think so. I think so. Yes, I think so. Some of the teachers were there, and so that's why they were saying congratulations, etc., etc. But well, it's part of the teachers in all the world having this opportunity, to participate in teacher development. Okay, for the first time, Cambridge Day was Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. So I think it was an very interesting opportunity for everybody. Stephen, we've got a few minutes to go. Would you like to give?
Are they? Sorry, so I'll answer this question. I just saw somebody put there. Are they downloadable? Yes, they are downloadable. So
okay.
You can find the most normal way to listen to the podcast is on any app. So you have Spotify, Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, any app. Also, you can go to the website send7.org, which I'll put in again now, and you can find it there. And there are different buttons to press to download. I hope that
great.
That question. Go on.
Great. Yes. Thank you once again, Stephen. Final words. Would you like to have a few final words for teachers who are connected or students of the language? We may have people connecting that are not particularly teachers, but people who love to listen to English and practice and learn.
Yeah.
Any final words?
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Joaquin. So I suppose I would say, if you find my English easy to understand, then Simple English News Daily could be a good way to start your day. You wake up, you're putting on some coffee and listen to the news from all over the world, from the Americas, from Europe, from Asia, from Africa. And I will tell you what the most important stories are in 7 minutes. And if you're a teacher, then you can use this in your classes. You can take the transcripts, the text for every episode on the website. And you can interact with me. You can get your students to send audio clips of themselves telling the news, and sometimes I can put them in as well. And yeah, what else is there to say, Joaquin?
No, that's it. That's it. Yeah, we want to thank you again, and thank you for putting, you know, this putting this spirit into the teaching of the language. Okay. Yeah. So, Stephen, thank you for having taken the challenge today. And we want to wish you. Yeah, we want to
talk to you, Joaquin.
All right. We want to wish you all the best with the projects lying ahead for SEND7 podcast. We know you will get to the top, you know, becoming famous with this project. And I want to thank Cambridge University Press educational partners in Chile for joining us in this live. Okay? My final words are the typical ones. Stay safe, stay home if you can, and remember, be kind to yourself and to others. Hope to meet you all again next Thursday, same time, same place. Stephen, thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.